There are currently 42 cloud seeding projects across the American West, like this one in Utah, where they take planes like this with flares attached. They fly right into the storm and send microscopic particles into the cloud. Particles that act like magnets for water droplets, bonding together until they are heavy enough to fall to the ground as rain or snow.
Right now, help is on the way to Roswell after 2 people were killed and dozens hurt because of heavy rain, which caused major flooding.
Are you telling us that we should just ignore all the stuff they're putting in our atmosphere? Tell that to the people of Roswell, New Mexico, who now find their city completely devastated by a storm that broke a 123-year-old rainfall record. Now, I've already informed you guys that what's happening in Roswell does not look normal, but I think this lady also lays it out pretty well in this video.
So Roswell, New Mexico is having flooding. Let me show you what else New Mexico has.
Burn scars from wildfires are especially prone to flooding. The increased vegetation of cloud seeding can actually contribute to wildfires. There's other ways cloud seeding can increase the risk of fire.
It's publicly available information, just like in Los Angeles, where we suddenly had atmospheric rivers. I've been in Los Angeles since 1996. I have never seen anything like the rainfall that happened. And interestingly, if you go to sawpa.org, you can read all about their cloud seeding program. Alberta does cloud seeding. Again, it's publicly available information. I am not saying cloud seeding causes floods, but there is a proven unpredictability with cloud seeding. It's well documented that it can increase precipitation up to 30%. So maybe a flood would have been 30% smaller. Please do research yourself and see if you feel if there isn't a correlation between this and what we've been seeing in the news.
Even if this situation seems fishy, I just kept having this one thought. Why would anyone want to target the town of Roswell, New Mexico? Fortunately, this same question led me to do some digging, and I found out about a plan to convert thousands and thousands of acres around Roswell into federal land.
So Roswell, New Mexico flooded? So I was looking some things up and I found something interesting. First, for reference, they got 5.78 inches in one day, which broke the record since 1901. Historical. So then I look at the map to see where the flooding is, and I notice that Roswell is on the southeast corner of New Mexico. There is a project with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they would like 700,000 acres of land for federal control for conservation. Now, this land is actually owned by you and me. So I'm looking for this land that the government wants, and I start going through the counties because this land they want is in New Mexico and Texas. And I notice Chavez County, and that's where Roswell, New Mexico is. And I guarantee you none of those people got flood insurance. Man, there is no telling what Mother Nature's going to do next.
As far as I know, this guy is not making things up. In fact, on April 16th of this year, the Biden administration released the Final Land Protection Plan and Environmental Assessment, LPP, for the Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge to deliver in perpetuity conservation of up to 700,000 acres of land for federal control in Texas and New Mexico. And for those who don't know, the Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge was originally created by Executive Order 7214 on October 24, 1935 by Franklin D. Roosevelt. With this order, 6,440 acres were designated as a refuge and breeding ground for migratory birds and other wildlife. And now, thanks to the current administration, another 700,000 acres will be added to the park, and this land will come from 15 Texas counties and 5 counties located located in eastern New Mexico. Unsurprisingly, Roswell is also on this list since it's part of Chavez County, which is on the chopping block as well. Now, interestingly, this executive order very clearly states that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would strategically protect habitat by acquiring lands in fee title or using perpetual conservation easements on up to 700,000 acres from only willing sellers. So they're saying they will not force you to sell, but if your land was devastated by supposed natural disasters and you have no choice but to sell, then of course they will be the first ones knocking on your door. This executive order is only part of the Biden administration's 30 by 30 initiative, which plans to federalize 30% of the country's land and oceans by the year 2030. Now, of course, a plan like this immediately faced a ton of criticism from current and former politicians from both states. Yvette Herrell, who is a former member of the New Mexico House of Representatives, wrote the following: "The plan will eliminate a portion of every local community tax base, reduce oil and mineral production in our state, and cheat private property owners out of future economic opportunities on the lands they have lived and worked on, in some cases for generations." Now, you should pay very close attention to what she's saying about oil. The state of New Mexico happens to be the second biggest oil producer in the entire country, and a big portion of its income comes from this industry. And in a surprise to absolutely no one, most of the oil in the state comes from Roosevelt, Chavez, Lea, and Eddy counties. And 3 of these counties are part of the 700,000 acres that the Biden administration wants to acquire. So it looks like they basically want to cripple New Mexico by taking away its biggest source of income and removing more jobs while it already suffers from a very high poverty rate. Now, another story is blowing up on the internet about what was apparently discovered in the chemtrails by a geoengineering watchdog.
Researchers from geoengineeringwatch.org were able to acquire a NOAA flying lab, which is just a plane that's set up for lab testing of the atmosphere. And what they did is they took this plane up right into one of these guys and took samples from beneath it, inside of it, and above it. And they found exactly what they were expecting. With that test, they were able to confirm that, in fact, they are spraying into our air a whole array of heavy metals, including aluminum, barium, and strontium. So what does this mean for us? They don't really care. Exposure to these kind of heavy metals are linked to things as small as cognitive impairments in children, like behavioral issues, sensory issues, ASD, or even ADHD, all the way up to conditions like Alzheimer's and even cancer. One of the most important things that we can do about this is start bringing awareness to it in the hopes that maybe we could begin to ban weather modification, just like other states are doing too. Second most important thing we can do, heavy metal detox. We're breathing these metals in whether we like it or not, and we need to make sure we're protecting ourselves and our family from the side effects.
And while we're talking about geoengineering, we have to talk about what FEMA is doing in North Carolina. I recently saw this story about a guy who not only volunteered, but also opened the doors to his warehouse to store supplies for hurricane victims.
It's not, we'll relocate you or compensate you for 90 days. It's straight, we need your space. You have 30 days to leave. I don't know what to do. I've been searching for a place like this for 3 years. I just put everything into this. All my time, you know how it goes. The portal to me is not just my art studio and where I make a living. It was everything to me.
And he did all of it after he lost his very own home in the flooding. But even after he let FEMA use his building for storage, they have apparently now given him a 30-day notice to vacate his property. Now, I don't think a government entity can just give you a legal notice like this one, but so far I've not found anything to refute his claim. Let's take a look at what I posted regarding the governor in North Carolina. Land grab proof. Video evidence surfaces proving Hurricane Helene was a land grab for lithium and quartz. Listen to the following video, and here are some key notes. We've been able to convince people that Buyouts are better. In some areas, you just shouldn't build back. We used my executive order. We just had a 1,000-year storm event. We know these events will become more and more intense. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper just said it all. Climate change is their excuse to push people out of their homes by any means necessary. Build back better equals a land grab.
You know, North Carolina had two 500-year storms within 20 months of each other in the same place. We just had a 1,000-year storm event in southeastern North Carolina, 1,000-year. We know that that's not true anymore. We know that these events are going to become more and more intense. So we've spent a lot of time being smart about the way we approach rebuilding. We go into communities, we work with them, we have plans for local governments. You know, in some areas, you just shouldn't build back. And we've been able to convince certain communities and people that buyouts are better.
Sadly enough, while the governor is telling the people of North Carolina to just sell their land and leave the place they grew up in, Asheville has become a great place to live if you are in any way involved in the mining business. Shame they couldn't pay the residents of this town to build back their lives, but then again, it wasn't part of their master plan, was it? Now, moving on from the stories about the land grab that's happening, let's talk about another piece of news which was circulating just a few days ago. In a major undercover operation, more than 150 people were arrested in Florida in relation to human trafficking. So let's hear what the sheriff has to say about these arrests.
I want to focus on what I think is a huge concern, and that huge concern is those that came here illegally. So I'm going to roll out a couple of things for you. First, I want you to see this chart. 25 illegal immigrants were arrested in this operation. They were from Venezuela, Cuba, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. 16% of these total arrests were people who should not even have been in this country, but they were here. And they were here because we have a federal government that enabled these criminals to come into the country and then treated them very well after the criminals came here illegally.
According to Sheriff Grady, they also arrested a Disney employee in this operation, and this part of the story was exactly what went viral and disturbed people the most.
Then there's Xavier Jackson. He's 27. He thought he was chatting with a 14-year-old, and he sent photos of himself doing things that's totally inappropriate. He did not travel, so once again, the Orange County Sheriff's Office assisted us, and because he's from Orlando, and traveled to arrest him, where he was charged with 3 counts of harmful material and 1 count of unlawful communication. Oh, did I mention that he just happens to be a lifeguard at the Polynesian Resort for Disney? You think there's a few children around there? That's right. I didn't stutter. He was a lifeguard at the Polynesian Resort for Disney and was bragging about that.
I guess these people haven't heard about the cruises Disney was allegedly sending to Epstein Island for years.
How do I know that Disney Cruise offered snorkeling trips to Epstein Island? Here you go. At that time in the Disney Cruise Line, it stated, "Be whisked away aboard the captain's rare powerboat to pair of the sun-soaked snorkeling site, and prepare for adventure like no other. Journey in picture-cute Turtle Cove, Buck Island. Immerse yourself in the underwater wonderland, where you're invited to swim and snorkel among a school of sea turtles approximately 1 hour. Afterwards, make your way to the second snorkeling stop, Little St. James Island, where curious fish dart back and forth in the clear blue water in colorful coral formation, nestling next to an amazing underwater formation. Afterwards, enjoy beverage and a snack before making your way back to St. Thomas Harbor. And we all know that Little St. James Island is Epstein's island.
So yeah, Disney has always had a tarnished history when it comes to this subject matter, and one of their employees getting arrested is simply not a big deal to them. What is a big deal is the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch clothing store, Mike Jeffries, who was arrested in connection to a sex trafficking case. Prosecutors have been investigating allegations that Jeffries ran a sex trafficking operation involving young men. Jeffries was arrested this week in Florida as part of an investigation led by federal prosecutors in New York. Jeffries was brought on board by the close friend of Jeffrey Epstein. Everything is connected. That's going to do it for today's video. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.